Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Allow me the pleasure of introducing you and inviting you to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. Glad you guys are here on this New Year's Eve edition of the fourth dimension big book study. Very pleased to have you guys here. I'm going to tell you guys a story a little bit later about a New Year's Eve of years past in Kevin's life that I will never forget. Before we do that, guys, let's get kicked off here with the set aside prayer, as we always do. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, about the 12 steps, and about New Year's Eve. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, the 12 steps, and New Year's Eve are all about. All right, you guys. As this is the fourth dimension big book study, I'm going to kick off with the two parts of our book that talk specifically about the fourth dimension, as we always do. On page 8, Bill Wilson says, I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. We are going to be catapulted. We are going to be rocketed into the fourth dimension. And for the sake of tradition and custom, as we always do on the fourth dimension big book study, for everyone who would, please put one hand up like this. Everybody put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh yeah. I never get tired of that. Wow. Benjamin Collins, I just have to acknowledge right now, that is a beautiful smile on your face, man. That's a beautiful, look at that. That was not there a couple months ago, brother. That smile was not there a couple months ago. Look at that. That's incredible, man. That's a great thing. I love that. Okay, well, man, holy smokes, New Year's Eve, 2024. And hope you all had a great and sober holiday season. As we go into 2025, there's two memories that I always have. One is of it Christmas Day it would have been about 1998, I think. Christmas 1998. I shared this in my home group last week. I spent that entire day, all 24 hours of that day, in what we call them alkathons here in Canada. I don't know if y'all have those. On Christmas Day, they have 24 hours. Okay, so that day I sat in an AA club room for 24 hours straight, meeting after meeting, because AA meetings were the only thing they would let me out of the psych ward for. And so being a good alcoholic, I found a loophole that I could go to this alkathon for 24 hours and get out of the hospital for a full day. And but what I really remember is at the end of that day, my parents taking me back to the psych ward, me crying and begging them not to let me come home and not to make me go back in the hospital. And they said, no way, you got to go. And anyway, so that was Christmas that year. When I think of New Year's Eve, I mean, I've had a lot of pleasant New Year's Eves, and it's great in sobriety. I just had my 15th sober Christmas this year, and this will be my 15th sober New Year's Eve. So that's great. I mean, that's a testament to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and that AA works. But New Year's Eve, I had to think, I'm like, I guess it would be 1990. What I remember is that I was 12 years old, and I had drank a couple of times before that, and it was already starting to show indications that I did not drink like a normal 12-year-old. But I remember being at this party. Derek got the joke. I remember being at this party in this terrible little basement, one of those unfinished basements at my friend Sean's house. And somehow I had gotten a case of beer, and guys, I know we've talked a lot about that physicality, but I started 12 years old. I drank one of those beers, and I drank two of those beers, and I drank 9 of those beers. and passed out by like 9:30 on New Year's Eve. And my memory of it is that I could hear people in the background counting down 3, 2, like all my like junior high school friends, 3, 2, 1. And I stood up and wanted to like find someone to give a New Year's kiss to, and started vomiting like everywhere in this small little room, and puked like everywhere over everyone, like just everywhere. So the memory that I have of it is that I'm 12 years old. Remember, the next morning, waking up alone, cold, in that basement suite, basement, and the guy's mom coming down with like a bucket and a mop and saying to me, you know, clean it up and get out of my house. Clean this up and get out of my house. And I remember being 12 years old. And at that age, after that incident, already singing the Alcoholic National Anthem. Never again. I'm never going to do this again. 12 years old, swearing off. Next time I'll control it. Next time I'll do better. I'm never going to live this way again. So that was New Year's Eve in 1990. So I always like to remember that and express my gratitude for this incredible program and what it's given to me, how it's changed my life. And I'm really glad to be able to be here and share this study with you. You know, folks were asking me today, are we still going to do the study? Are we still doing the study? Let me tell you, like my New Year's Eve, I'm going from here to after this, I'm going to go speak at a detox at a homeless shelter / detox called Alpha House here in Calgary, and then I'm going to a sober dance. Like and I've already been to a meeting today. This is my life, and it's an incredible way of life, a way of usefulness, happiness, and peace of which I had never even dreamed. And really glad to be here on New Year's Eve to share this with you guys, and to be here and to go through this work. So with that said, you guys, let's go to, we'll be on page 60 in the book, and we'll do just a little bit of review. So I think we talked about this last week. When we get to how it works in the book, like the actual reading that we tend to do at every AA meeting, we're really at a spot kind of in between step 2 and step 3. We're not really at step 3 right now. What the first 100 are doing, what Bill Wilson is doing here, is laying out the entire set of actions that we are supposed to take before he's asking us to make a decision, right? Isn't that only fair? Alex S. from Christina Lake, I barely recognized you. Looking clean cut, brother. Looking good. Looking good. Nice to see you. So this place, and how it works, we're really in between step 2 and step 3. We haven't made our decision yet what they're doing, and I think it's only fair. Before we make this decision in step 3, they're laying out the entire program of action for us for our inspection before we're being asked to make this decision if we're going to go through with this work or not. Okay. And so tonight, you know, having gone through that, having read through that last week, we're going to talk about step 3. Now, when we get to page 60, we see the 3 pertinent ideas there. Okay. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if we were sought. This is what we call the 3 pertinent ideas. And we talked about this last week. What steps are these pertinent ideas related to? Well, a lot of people will say this is, well, it's step 1, 2, and 3, right? And we learned this last week. A, we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives is step 1. B, that probably no human power could relieve our alcoholism is also step 1. And we talked about this last week. That second pertinent idea is really about 2 people. It's about Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychiatrists in the world who could not get Roland Hazard sober, and it's about Lois Wilson, a devoted wife who loved Bill Wilson very much and could not get him sober. Okay? Which is to say that for people of my type, alcoholics of my type, there is only one solution in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that is spiritual. God conquers alcoholism. If I could summarize AA in just 3 words, that would be it. God conquers alcoholism. And what I'm reminded of is, like, all of the actions that we take in AA, going to meetings, getting a sponsor, going through the 12 steps, surrendering, doing step 4 and 5, confession, doing steps 8 and 9, restitution, becoming aware of my defects of character, asking God to remove them, praying and meditating, taking regular daily inventory, and going and being of service to someone else. All of those actions don't get me sober. All of those actions get me connected to God, and God gets us sober. The purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous, as I understand it, are a series of steps, actions that we take to get us connected to a power greater than ourselves that solves our problem, that removes the necessity for us to have to drink. Okay? The purpose of AA is to do slowly what alcohol used to do quickly. In the past, when I was restless, irritable, and discontent, and I needed to feel a sense of ease and comfort, I only had one way to do that, and that was to take a drink. Today, when I feel restless, irritable, and discontent, I have a series of spiritual tools that I can apply in my life to help me feel a sense of ease and comfort without having to take a drink. And that's the purpose of AA. And so when we talk about that God could and would if he were sought, in the last pertinent idea in C, that God could and would if he were sought, that's step 2. Okay? Step 2, we've come to believe that there is a power greater than ourselves, okay, that can restore us to sanity. But we learned in the chapter, We Agnostics, which we've already read through, we've learned what the real problem is. Deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. Great. Step 2, perfect. But it may be obscured by pomp, by calamity, and by worship of other things. What Bill Wilson talks about on page 12 in our book, he says, I had needed and wanted God. There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came, but soon the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. The problem is, I come to believe in a power in step 2, and step 3, tonight we're going to make a decision that we want to get connected to that power, but it does not mean that I have access to that power yet, okay? The analogy that I make all the time is to talk about Wi-Fi. We all know what it's like to have our phone or have our computer in a situation where we're just not connected to the Wi-Fi. We can't get online. Okay, we got a low signal, low connection to the internet, okay, to the Wi-Fi. It doesn't mean the Wi-Fi is not there. It means that I am not connected to it. So the purpose of the steps that we just read through last week is to gradually change my connection and my ability to connect to and access this power, okay? That's what the purpose of these steps is. And today, in particular, we're going to talk about making a decision, okay? And that's really all we're doing in step 3, is making this decision to move ahead with the rest of the program. Now, I used to hear people say that in AA, and people would say, well, step 3 is really just a decision to move on with the rest of the steps. And I would say, well, no, it's clearly much more complex than that for someone like me. In particular, it's very, this is a very, very big deal. And it's not. In fact, those people were right. Really, I believe in step 3, all we're doing is making a decision to carry on with these actions. So, 3 pertinent ideas, A, B, and C. A and B, step 1, C, step 3, and now it says being convinced. We were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? So let's get started. Oh, Brad is here. Brad, hello, Brad. So lovely to have you. Brad let me know he was going to be a little bit late. Brad, are you interested in reading for us tonight?
I'd like to read. I brought my book. I apologize for being late, but I'm excited to be here, so I'd be happy to read.
Great. Okay, so we're going to start on page 60, and we're going to talk about the first requirement right now for step 3. So the first requirement, Brad, if you'd be kind enough to read for us.
The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. I forgot to say, hi, I'm Brad. I'm an alcoholic. Um, if his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits.
You know, I think I've joked about this before, but I am a recovering only child. So I didn't grow up with any brothers or sisters, and you know, I know that always gets a chuckle, especially when I remind everyone I'm the only child of a therapist, which is actually far worse. But being an only child was great. People ask me all the time, "How was it?" It was great. It was phenomenal because I was the prince of the universe. I got literally anything I wanted whenever I wanted it, which is that's a good deal. Okay. And as an only child, you know, my feeling in life was what's mine is mine and what's yours is also mine. Okay. And I didn't learn how to share. I didn't learn how to have conflicts with people. I didn't learn any of that. And so I lived completely on self-will, and it was a great thing until I was about 6 years old and I had to go out into the world and start interacting with other human beings. And immediately, exactly what our book says, I was immediately in collision with other people. Okay. And a really good indicator for me today, guys, on whether or not I'm living in self-will, a really good indicator for that is to simply ask myself, am I in collision with other people? Okay. If I'm in collision with other people, okay, seemingly without provocation, even if it looks like people are colliding into me and I'm sitting there minding my own business and people are just, I'm in collision with other people. Okay. What does our book say? Our book says, on that basis, the basis of living on self-will, we are almost always in collision with somebody or something, even though our motives are good. Okay. We can have good motives. Okay. I can tell myself my intentions are the best. Okay. I want the right things. I want good things, and my motives are all good. Okay. But usually, what our book says is that, yes, sometimes I'm patient and generous, even self-sacrificing, but on the other hand, I'm more likely to be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. Okay. And as we continue through this study, we're going to talk about that word selfishness. And we're going to talk about, in particular, the word self-centeredness. And I'm going to talk about selfishness and self-centeredness as being the root of my defects of character. Okay. And we're going to talk about how my defects of character and how our defects of character continue to get us in collision with other people. That collision results in me feeling restless, irritable, and discontent, will often take me back to drinking. Okay, and we joked about this last week. Raise your hand if you ever got drunk at somebody. Anybody here ever got drunk at somebody? That is not, moderate drinkers do not get drunk at other people. Okay? Never. My parents never in their whole life have they ever thought about getting drunk at other people. Okay, but for us, with this this egotistical, selfish, self-willed, run riot way of life in collision with everything and everyone, seemingly without provocation, it seems to be their fault. It's easy for me to blame them. Okay, I can blame other people for everything I do. Seems very, very easy for me then to start becoming restless, irritable, and discontent, to fall victim to a belief, an insane idea, the mental obsession that this time, somehow, some way, I'm gonna control and enjoy my drinking, and find myself trying to seek ease and comfort in a drink again, triggering that physical allergy, and I'm gone. Okay. And so when we talk about resentments, I mean, we're going to get into step 4 next week. It's the number one offender. Most of the resentments I have there are as a result of me living in self-will and becoming in collision with other people. Okay. And we're going to talk about how we change our perspective on this whole deal here in a minute. Okay. Back to you, Brad.
What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. He becomes, on the next occasions, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? Is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony?
Okay, I
Our
want to talk about this. I want to talk about this example of the that we're like the actors in a play, and that we're trying to make the arrangements ourselves and direct the play ourselves. And one of the examples that's going to come up here in a little while is God is the director and we are the actors. Okay, and this is how I need to live and need to think about the world. Raise your hand. Anyone here ever done like a play, even a school play? Any? Okay, so I'll call on Stephanie. Stephanie, when you did that play, were you was there lights on you? Like was it like lit and you were on a stage?
Yes.
Okay, and when you looked off the stage out into the darkness, what could you see out there?
I couldn't see anything.
Exactly. Perfect. Great answer. Okay. So here's the thing. Imagine I'm an actor on a stage, okay? And I'm doing this play and I don't have the script. I don't know who the characters are. I don't know what the arc of the play is. I have no idea. I have no idea what your story is. I barely even know what my own story is. And yet there I am trying to give direction to people on the stage. Okay. You can understand that I would be a creator of confusion rather than harmony in a situation like that. And of course, the show would not go off well. If an actor who's on the stage who doesn't even have the script and doesn't know any of the characters and doesn't know the story and doesn't know other people's stories, starts trying to indicate to people how they should be acting. Okay. What I like to remember is that when you're in a play like that, out in the darkness, out there, and you can't see them, just like Stephanie said, when the lights are on you and in the middle of the show, there is a director out there. And that director has the script. And that director knows who every character is on the stage. And that director knows what the arc of the entire story is. And that director knows exactly who's supposed to exit, when and where, and what their stories are, and how they're interacting with one another, and what the entire purpose of the play is overall. Okay? And this is the attitude that I need to have towards God. That I trust that that God has a plan, that he wants a plan, that he wants good things for me. You know, I was just at a meeting earlier today, and that fellow was talking about, imagine if you had, your own children in your hand, and you look down at them and thought, like, what would you want for your children? You would want only the best, and you would love them very much, okay? And then imagine that God has us in his hands and wants the same. If my human ability is a failed, fallible human being to look at these children and have that level of love, imagine the level of love that God has for us and the plan that God has for us. And that was a hard thing for me to accept for a long time, that God wanted good things for me, that God wanted the best for me. Like, it's hard. It's still sometimes hard for me to fathom. You know, a friend of mine who's Hindu, you know that saying that we have all the time, everything happens for a reason. We have all heard that. In Hindu, my friend Swathika taught me, in Hindu, what they say is everything happens for good, okay? So why am I saying all this? Because I thought about this analogy of the play. You know, I was a drama kid, probably not a surprise, okay? But growing up, I was a drama kid. I was on stage and did a lot of that acting. And I've thought a lot about this analogy of actors and directors. And what I need to remember is out there in the darkness, as Stephanie said, in the darkness, there is a director. And God has the script. God has written the play. He's a writer-director, Derek, okay? God has written the play, okay? Derek's a writer too. He has written a play. He knows who all the characters are. He knows what their story is. And my job is to just play my part in the play. That is it, okay? And when we start to talk about what is God's will for me, God's will for me is to just play my part in the play, okay? Now you may say, what the hell does that mean? Okay, I have no idea. How am I supposed to know what my part in the play is? We're going to talk more about that. How do I get to learn what God's will is for me? Right? And how do I learn to just play my part in the play? Okay, back to you, Brad.
Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. Politicians and reformers are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity.
All right, brothers and sisters, this next paragraph is key. This is essential, absolutely essential in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, this next paragraph, we're going to read through it, and I would like you to make a note. Number 1, step 4, column 4. So when we go to step 4, column 4, we're going to refer back to this paragraph as well. When we get to steps 6 and 7, we are going to refer back to this program. Brad, would you be kind enough to read it for us?
Yeah. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we inevitably find at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt.
All right, and so that's key. As I just mentioned, selfishness and self-centeredness are the root of all of my defects of character. When I'm living in self-will, I'm being fueled by selfishness and self-centeredness. Self-centeredness, guys, does not mean egotistical or vanity. Okay, a lot of times I misunderstood the word self-centeredness. We say, well, he sure thinks he's great. He's so self-centered. It's not always the case. When I talk about self-centeredness, it can easily be, hello, just as me thinking how great I am. It's much more likely for me to be sitting around thinking about what a piece of garbage I am, and how everyone hates me, and everyone's out to get me, and so on and so forth. And so I'm driven by self-centered fear and selfish, self-seeking motives. And while I'm driven by selfish, self-seeking, self-centered, fear-based motives, even though my motives, I think they're good, they're being fueled by selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, self-centered motives, fearful motives. And I'm out in the world, and what does our book say? When I'm living in self-will, what am I in? I'm in collision. Right away, I'm in collision with other people, okay? And I step on the toes of my fellows, and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find, invariably means every single time we investigate, every single time without variation, at some time in the past, I've made a decision based on selfish, self-seeking, self-centered, fearful motives, and that placed me in a position to be hurt. And when we get to step 4, we'll understand a little bit more about this, okay? The only thing as a sensitive alcoholic in that arc of a story that I just mentioned that I am going to remember, however, is one thing. The only thing I'm going to remember and carry with me for years later is the hurt. That's it. That's all I'm going to remember is the hurt that happened to me as a result of that someone else hurt me because I'm a sensitive alcoholic. That's all I'm going to remember. I'm not going to recall how I was living in self-will and became in collision with them and how I stepped on their toes and they retaliated, how I made a decision based on self that put me in that position to be hurt. And that's why we're going to deeply investigate this when we get to step 4. For now, just hold on to the idea that selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of our troubles, okay? The next line here, so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making, okay? And that's very good news, guys. If my troubles are of my own making, that means I can stop making these troubles for myself. If I learn a new way of life, a new way to live, if I make this decision to start living this new way of life, which is really what I'm doing in step 3, I'm making a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. And ultimately what I'm doing is just making a decision to start living a new way in accordance with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I make this decision and start living this way of life, I can stop making these troubles for myself, because all of my troubles, the root of my trouble, it just says the root of my trouble is selfishness and self-centeredness, self-centered, fearful motives, going out in the world, getting in collision with other people and ending up hurting them. They retaliate. I'm living restless, irritable, and discontent. I have an insane thought and I start drinking again. That's how it happens over and over and over in my life. Brad, back to you.
So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They rise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God made that possible, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. This is the how and the why of it.
So one of the things that I love here, guys, is this line, because most of us will say the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot. Okay, you'll hear that quoted a lot, and that's not the full quote. The full quote, and I love this, is the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Okay, and I didn't think so either, guys. I didn't think so at all. When I first got to AA and people were talking about selfish and self-centered, I thought, you don't understand. I'm the victim here, okay? I'm a good guy. I've been horribly abused and lamed and traumatized by the world. You don't understand. It's the battle cry of every alcoholic. You don't understand. My case is different than yours. You don't understand, okay? And the reality is I didn't understand. I had no understanding whatsoever, okay? And this is why I needed to do a thorough inventory of my life, okay? Because I had no real idea what was going on in my life because it had never really been investigated. I'd never inspected or taken inventory of my life at all, particularly allowing someone else in step 5 to take a look at my stuff and to let me know what was really going on in there. Okay, so I was an extreme example of self-will run riot. I just shared with you about being an only child and who I thought I was. God forbid, like I went out into the world and all I did, I was an agent of chaos. I was lying, cheater, deceitful, harmful, though I usually didn't think so. I thought it was their fault somehow, okay? And that's what would happen. Okay, and that's why we need to do 4 and 5. Now it says we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes this possible, and there's no way entirely getting rid of self without his aid. I agree with this 100%, of course. That said, it can take quite some time, months sometimes, of spiritual work in the 12 steps before I have a spiritual awakening significant enough to really become God-centered instead of self-centered. Okay, and that's really the change that we're going to make here. Okay, and that can take months. What, guys, do we have, has God given us in the 12 steps that can be an immediate, instantaneous shortcut to selfishness? What is one thing that we can do? It's one of the 12 steps that we can do instantaneously that will automatically change my my relationships with people, change what my motives are in terms of interacting with people, and will immediately pull me out of selfishness and self-centeredness. It's one simple action. Alex S., working with others, he just said. That is the shortcut that we have in AA. Prior to doing all of the steps, going through the inventory, going through the amend process, all of that, I believe that we can start working step 12 immediately from day one. And immediately when I start working step 12, I can start making that transition from being a taker to being a giver. I can start to generate a sense of usefulness and purpose and meaning in my life as a result of doing this work for my home group, even if it's a simple commitment, a simple service commitment at my home group. We're trying to be of love and service to other people with no motive whatsoever other than I want to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to someone else. I want to be of service to someone else. This is for anyone who's struggling with selfishness and self-centeredness, and you haven't had the spiritual awakening yet. This is the shortcut. This is the remedy that we have in AA that can, in the short term, I say, start to change our motives and our interactions and the way that we're relating with people, and begin to develop some sense of God-centeredness instead of being self-centered, okay? Because it's very, very difficult for me to go help you and yet be doing it for myself and seeing what I can take from you, okay? I can't do both at the same time. So we're going to go be of service. That is one of the ways that we can start to overcome selfishness and self-centeredness. You know, it says here, neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. Yes, that's true. It is true that we had to have God's help, but how do we get God's help? I always make this joke that it's like, these are not easy alternatives to face. One was to keep drinking and go on to the bitter end into oblivion. The other is to accept God's help. And I showed up in AA and I said, okay, I'm ready for your spiritual help. I'm ready to be helped. Please, oh Lord, help me. Help me. Okay. And they're like, yeah, here you go. Here's a pen and a notebook and a mop. Okay. Get to work. I'm like, oh, what about the help? Where's the help? Like, that is the help. That is the help. Start writing your inventory and take that mop and go clean up your home group. Okay. That is the spiritual help. Right. This is not a something for nothing deal. God is not going to do this work for us without me having to do what I need to do to get connected to him. Okay. And that's the purpose of the 12 steps. The purpose of the 12 steps to remove those worldly clamors, that pomp, calamity, the worship of other things that are separating me from that power. And one of them that is separating me is selfishness and self-centeredness. And one of the things that I can start to do is start to be of service at my home group right away, as well as working with other new members. You know, if you're here and you've got 30 days sober, go find someone that has 10 days sober and talk to them and tell them how you got 30 days sober. Okay. Because while I'm thinking about you guys, when I'm thinking about you, I am not thinking about myself. And I'm here to tell you that the single most dangerous place on planet Earth for me is me sitting at home alone thinking about myself. That is the most dangerous place in the world. Okay? So when I stop thinking about myself and I start thinking about you, I begin to experience some freedom from this selfishness and this self-centeredness. Okay? Back to you, Brad.
This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal, we are his agents. He is the father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom.
All right, so I want to share a couple things here about that paragraph. I always kind of resisted or I kind of cringed at this idea of like, I'm playing God. Okay, what it reminded me of is like the guy in the psych ward who thinks he's Jesus. You know, is like, I'm not, like, I don't think that I'm God. I don't actually believe that I'm God, right? And so that's that kind of throwaway line that people use. All you need to know in order to take step 2 is know that there is a God and you ain't it. Okay, it's like, I don't think that I'm God. Like that, it really kind of spooked me out a little bit, truly. So for me, the way that I kind of was able to reconcile that, you know, we often talk about God being the king. Okay, God is the king, capital K, king. Sandy Beach always said, your father is a king. You have nothing to be afraid of. When I think about playing king, okay, I played king all the time. Little King Kevin, okay? Little King Kevin has become displeased with the subjects of his kingdom again, okay? And wants to start beheading people, okay? That's what happens. So when I think, I'm just talking for myself, this idea of we had to quit playing God, it's like I had to quit playing king. I had to stop thinking that I was the king, okay? And what I needed to do was I needed to find a new king, man, okay? And then I was able to start developing some level of humility, okay, which is the necessary ingredient for me. One of the necessary ingredients for humility is a sincere desire to seek and do God's will. And when I began to realize that I was not the king and that there was a new king in my life is when I became right-sized and I became humbled, deeply humbled by the incredible power of God as I understand him today. And that's, I can't allow a new king, or we're here in a moment, we're going to read about a new employer. Okay. I can't have a new employer unless first I remove myself from that position. Does that make sense, guys? That's why when they say it's the how and the why of it, first of all, we had to quit playing God. I can't allow God into my life if I still think that I am God. I can't allow a new king to rule the kingdom while I'm still trying to rule the kingdom. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Monty Python's though. When I was trying to rule the kingdom, it was like that one king who was like riding the horse with his buddy behind him who was just doing the horse clapping. Like it wasn't I was a king of a one-man universe. Okay, like somebody told me one time, you think you're a great leader, before you tell us what a great leader you are, take a look behind you and see how many people are following you. Okay, yeah, it wasn't much of a kingdom, believe me. But that's what it is. That's why that has to come first. And the next thing I want to say here, guys, I want to talk about this. God is the principal, we are his agents. It doesn't mean the principal of a like an elementary school or anything like that. It's principal like a leader of a business, owner of a business, and we are the salespeople. Okay, so it's like God owns the business and we are doing his work. Okay, the one that I love here the most, obviously, is God is the Father and we are his children. This idea, this concept of God being the Father, obviously comes to us from Christianity, from the Our Father prayer. And if that makes you bristle with antagonism, me talking about this, I just want to point out that I also talk about Islam. I've also talked about Hindu. I'll talk about Judaism. I want it all, man. I want everything. Okay. When I wasn't fussy when I drank, I wasn't fussy when I used drugs. I wanted the full bang, and I want the same thing with spirituality, man. I want it all. Okay. So look, just to say, guys, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talks about the Lord's Prayer, our Father, who art in heaven. Okay, and we end this study every week with the Our Father prayer. I just want to talk about what I've learned about God being the Father and we being His children. And I've learned this from a guy named Emmett Fox. If you've never read Emmett Fox, don't go to sleep tonight until you check out Emmett Fox, Sermon on the Mount, Emmett Fox, the Lord's Prayer, Emmett Fox, the Golden Key. Incredible stuff. Quickly, when we are given that phrase, our Father, that was a revolutionary in terms of a relationship that we would have in a monotheistic relationship with this power. It's not a king and his peasants, or some tyrant dictator and his poor little followers. This is a relationship of a father and children, our Father. And so that means really three things. One is the type of relationship. I already talked about this earlier tonight. How do typically parents feel about their children? Typically, we would probably agree, typically fathers love their children deeply. And this is the feeling that our Father has for us. Okay. And so that's the first thing that we need to recognize about this father and child relationship. The second thing, which is remarkable, is that children are genetically made of the same stuff that their fathers are made of, biological fathers. And so in that way, we are made of the same stuff as God. What is in God is in us. You know, I had a really powerful meditation a couple days ago where I realized that there is like life inside of me. Now, this is going to sound crazy, but it had never occurred to me before that there is life inside of me, and that life alone, just by virtue of having that life inside of me, is a gift that I have been given by God. And I connected even more with this idea that we are offspring from whatever God is. If God is the Father, we are made of the same stuff as God. And then the third thing that I love is that when I call you guys brothers and sisters, I mean that in a literal sense, because we have all come from the same Father, literally, spiritually. Our Father. It's not my father or your father, it's our Father. And so this idea that God is the Father and we are the children, okay? God loves us. We are made of the same stuff as God, and we are all from the same God, and we are all literally brothers and sisters in this spiritual world. You guys with me on that? Can I get an oh yeah? Can I get one of these?
Oh, yeah.
Come on, there you go. All right, I love it. Okay. Now, guys, this next part, top of page 63. When I take my sponsees through step 3, this is the thing that I really focus on, okay? Brad, why don't you read it for us first, and then we'll go through it.
When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop. I'll stop you there, Brad. I just want to point out, this is the employment contract that I am making with God, okay? In step 3. This is not a something for nothing deal, okay? I've been a something for nothing guy my whole life. Front me the dope, put it on my front me the dope, and I'll pay you later. Give me the bottle and put it on my tab. Okay? And I come to AA with the same expectation. And I did this for a long time. Give me the light in your eyes. Give me the 15 years of sobriety, and then I'll do the work. Make me feel easy and comfortable, and then I'll do the 12 steps. And that's not the deal. Okay? God is going to do this for us. He is all powerful, and he will provide what I need if, and this is my deal, I keep close to him, and I perform my work well. Okay. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is that we have a new employer, capital E. I have been fired from the management position of my own life. Okay. Just like we talked about, we had to quit playing God so I could find a new God. I had to quit playing king so I could find a new king. I had to quit trying to manage my own life and allow a new power, all powerful, being all powerful. God will provide what I need if I keep close to him and perform his work well. How do I keep close to him and how do I perform his work well? Okay. Well, so first of all, what is God's work for me? I'll give you a hint. There's 12 of them. Okay. That I believe that is God's work for us. God's work for me is those 12 steps. And there's a lot encapsulated in those 12 steps in terms of a way of life, but primarily that is God's work for us. Now, how do I keep close to God? Of course, prayer and meditation, step 11. How am I going to have a relationship with someone if I'm not talking to them? Somebody gave me a great line the other day. They said, if I talk to my children as much as I talk to God, would my children still know that I love them? That's a good question. How much am I talking to God? That's one of the 10 commandments. Love God with all your heart. Love God. Do I love God, or am I just looking to get love from God? Okay. Am I loving of God, or am I trying to take? Okay. So I have to exercise step 11, prayer and meditation. But what's another way that I can be close to God? How do I stay close to God? I stay close to God by staying close to his children. I stay close to God by staying close to you. And this is the magic of step 12, is that when I'm connected in step 12 and I'm connected in the fellowship of the Spirit, I am alive in the Spirit of God. I believe that. I do believe in the saying, the phrase, God walks, talks, and shakes hands in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe that deeply. I went to a meeting at the Garnet Block today. Anyone in Calgary knows Kevin Olson doesn't go to the Garnet Block very often. It was beautiful. It was phenomenal. And God is surely in that room as much as he is in Primary Purpose Group. And if I have been a snob about PPG, it's because I'm a fallible human being. God was beautiful in that room today. I'm going to go to Alpha House here in a little minute. Okay. I assure you, God is going to be in that room. If I stay close to you, I stay close to God. Okay. God is going to do this for me. And then I go to work for him. Okay. And we're going to point this out again when we get to the step 3 prayer. Brad, back to you.
Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn.
So one of the things I like here, it says we're conscious of his presence. It's like for the first time, the presence of God, we're conscious of it. Okay. Now, once we get to the end of step 5, we're going to start to feel nearer to it. Okay. That's one of the step 5 promises that I love. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. So right now we have like an acquaintance with God. We're conscious of his presence. Okay. When we're done step 5, we're going to feel the nearness of God, man. Okay. We're going to start to have a real meaningful, intimate relationship with God. Okay. In terms of prayer, guys, one of my favorite lines, it's when I started talking to God, not just talking about God, that my life changed. I spent a long time in AA just talking about God. It's when I started talking to God that my life really changed. Okay, so now, guys, we're going to be at the step 3 prayer, and we're almost done for tonight. So we'll finish right at 7. So that'll be great. 7 o'clock my time, anyway. We're going to talk about the step 3 prayer. When we do step 3 at my home group at PPG, we like to do it the old school way. And in the old days, you went to a little room at the top of Dr. Bob's house and you did steps 1, 2, and 3. And until you had done step 3, you could not attend the meeting. Okay. And you had to go through those 3 steps before they would let you come into the meeting. And one of the things that that we like to do at PPG is get together as a group. So it'll be kind of a celebration. We'll say, okay, you know, Kevin is going to do his step 3. Maybe it's the first time I've done it, or maybe I've done it many times and I'm kind of, you know, reaffirming my decision. We all get together in the back room and we all get down on our knees. We do a little introduction and then we say this prayer together. And so, and then there's a couple other things that I do that I'll share with you. I just want to give you some flavor of how we do it at Primary Purpose Group. So with that, Brad, would you be kind enough to read the step 3 prayer for us?
We were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker, as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. We thought well before taking the step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him.
All right. So again, guys, in the step 3 prayer, this is super important. I want to point out here, again, this is not a something for nothing deal. Take away my difficulties, God. God, take away my difficulties. Why? That victory over them will bear witness to those that I will help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. God, you do this for me. I go to work for you. Okay. One of the things my sponsor, Alan, says to me is like, Kevin, we're allowed to have victories in AA. Okay. I don't have to shy away from the fact that I enjoy some successes and victories in life. I don't have to make myself small because I'm afraid of what other people may think. Step 3 says, let victory over the problems that I had. And I had problems. And some days I still do. Any of the problems I used to have, I still have today to some degree. But I have enjoyed a lot of victory over them. And it's okay to have victories so long as I'm not taking credit for them to myself. I'm giving the glory to God and to Alcoholics Anonymous. And my sponsor would like it if I gave glory to him too, but okay. Give glory to God and to Alcoholics Anonymous and allow myself to bear witness to those that I will help. God, you do this for me. I go to work for you. Okay. Now, Brad's going to read the next. Oh, and one of the other things that I want to say, I was taught, and I believe, and I talk about this all the time, that line, relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. I was told the entire program of Alcoholics Anonymous can be summarized in that one line. Okay? Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Everything we're doing here, the entire thrust. And of course, notice, guys, it doesn't say relieve me of the bondage of drinking. Okay? It says relieve me of the bondage of self. Why? Because by this point, we have recognized, guys, what's the root of our trouble? Selfishness, self-centeredness. Selfishness and self-centeredness leading to me being in collision with other people, feeling restless, irritable, and discontent, falling prey to an insane thought, picking up a drink, and I'm gone. Okay? So with that said, Brad, read the next paragraph, please, and we'll wrap up for tonight.
We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we expressed the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once.
Okay, beautiful. So here it tells us it's very desirable to take this step with someone else. Okay, and it says here, an understanding person, wife, best friend, spiritual advisor, or in the case of Primary Purpose Group, our entire home group. Okay, whoever wants to come and check it out. And so we'll have like a big group of like 30 people, all of us down on our knees, with some guy ready to take the step 3. Okay, and sometimes if we're lucky on a good night, we'll have like 3 or 4 people doing this, man. It is lit. It's awesome. Okay, so here's what we do. We all of us, all 30 of us, or however many are there, will all say the step 3 prayer together. Then it says, the wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we express the idea, voicing it without reservation. Our tradition, our custom at PPG is that then the new person will say the step 3 prayer again, but they're going to say it in their own words. And I think that has a lot more meaning. It's a lot more powerful when they say it in their own words, their own surrender to God. They can kind of paraphrase from the step 3 prayer, no problem with that. But they're going to say it. They're going to make their own surrender to God with all of us. And as I said, sometimes we'll have 3 or 4 people together doing it. It's incredible. And one of the things that I like to look at here is that I don't believe that like what the man or woman says in that step 3 is nearly as indicative of where they're at in step 3 as the fact that they're willing to come and get down on their knees and say a prayer in front of a bunch of people. That tells me that this is a person who is willing to try something new. All right. This is a person who is making a decision to try something else in their life. And it's a pretty good indication. So then the last final thing that we do, we have a tradition where we ask a question after this is done. They say the prayer, we say, okay, now, tradition of primary purpose group, simple question, who do you work for now? And we've done this dozens, if not hundreds of times, and we've never had anyone get it wrong. They always say, guys, who do we work for now? Who do we work for? God.
You.
God.
G to the OD, baby. G Dizzle. G Dizzle. Yeah. Who do we work for now? We work for God. God does this for me. I go to work for him. I have a new employer. Being all powerful, he will provide what I need. Not what I want, but what I need. If keep close to him, perform his work well. Love it. Okay. I think that's all I want to share. I've got something else I wanted to share, but I'm going to share about it next week so we don't go over time. I will just end on this. It says here that this is only a beginning. It's only a beginning. Though, if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, is felt at once. Yes, we saw that happen with Bill Wilson on page 12. I needed and wanted God, and he came. But soon, the sense of his presence was blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. Okay? In step 3, all we are doing is making a decision that I want to have this spiritual awakening. It does not mean that that spiritual awakening has happened yet. That was the mistake I made for years with these moral and philosophical convictions galore. That what I needed to do in step 3 is become spiritual, have this spiritual awakening, and then carry on with the rest of the steps. And I had it completely backwards. In step 3, all I'm doing is making a decision that this is the direction that I want to go. So, the story that I talk about, and then we'll wrap up. We'll say the Lord's Prayer, and don't run away because we're going to go around the room and everyone can say hello and introduce themselves. There's 2 frogs sitting on a log. Okay, I know some of you have heard this before. Hang in there. There's 2 frogs sitting on a log, and one of the frogs makes a decision that it's going to jump off the log. How many frogs are there on the log? Well, the answer, of course, is 2. Because he's made a decision, but he hasn't done anything yet. And the moment that I heard that story was the first time I fully understood really what step 3 was all about. I'm making a decision that this is the way I want to go, but it doesn't mean that that thing has happened yet. Okay? If I make a decision that I want to go to Las Vegas, am I in Las Vegas? Not at all. I got a lot of work to do and a long way to go to get there. But at least I've made a decision. Okay? All right, guys, let's close with the Lord's Prayer, Our Father, and then don't jump off. We'll go around the circle, around the room, and everyone can say hello and just introduce yourselves. Okay, Our Father, who art in heaven,
Heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread.
And forgive us our
Forgive us our
trespasses,
trespasses,
as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us
Lead
not
us
into
not into
temptation,
temptation,
but deliver us from evil.
For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory,
and glory, forever and
forever and
ever.
ever.
all right.
I will.